Well, if it all goes well, Mike, this time next year or the year after, we could see a completely new uh, financial system in place. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people walking around with smiles on their faces.
that's something we haven't seen in a few years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Rob. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your interest. It's instrumental in getting this accomplished, and I hope we've given some people some hope. The
Well,
truth will save us.
oh yeah. Well, Mike, as I said to you before in our personal conversations, like I've every faith in this system that you've come up with. I've looked at it and looked at it over many, many hours, and to me, there's no way it couldn't work.
Right.
So I'll do what I can to help you get
Nobody's
to work.
poked a hole in it yet in 43 years.
Well,
I
there
mean,
you
there's
go.
been some people who thought they could, but,
hmm
they've all
Now,
fallen by the wayside.
just before we call it a night, Mike, I've gotten a question in on the chat box here from a guy called Pat, and he's asked, could we maintain growth with nil interest?
With new interest?
Nil.
Oh, absolutely. That's the freedom to maintain growth. You can't maintain growth with interest. Interest is the thing that prevents you from maintaining growth. So yes, of course that's every eradication of interest is every power to grow. All you have to do is be producing enough that you can afford to service whatever promissory obligations you assume. You see, so if you commit to $83.33 months to own a new home, then you're forcing yourself to continue working, at a rate that it can afford the home. So that's all there is to it. I mean, you see, it's this system, this present system, which prevents us from sustaining growth. Now, growth isn't necessarily even desirable, but the reason that we have to depend on growth in this system is this perpetual multiplication of falsified indebtedness. You have to grow just to maintain a margin of solubility against that. But because the debt grows at an inherently escalating rate of ever greater sums of periodic interest on an ever greater sum of debt, you see, you can't even keep pace with it. We need phenomenal growth just to keep pace with the debt, and it's just impossible out of a given circulation, which itself is dedicated instead evermore to servicing the debt versus remaining available to sustain industry. So yes, you can sustain any growth that you want. Growth is production. Mathematically perfected economy is the ability to finance our production for no more than giving up an equal amount of production. Now, you can never get it for less than that in a just economy, because anything less than that is to be forced to give away your production. We can't ever ask that. We want like production for our production in a just world. So mathematically perfected economy, because it eradicates the costs, the artificial costs, which are imposed upon us by this inherent irreversible multiplication of falsified indebtedness, it's the only way to sustain all of the growth that we're capable of, because it imposes no redundant cost whatsoever upon us. Mathematically perfected economy costs us virtually nothing. So if you want to build a house, so long as you want to do the work of building a house, you have a house, whatever it is even that you specialize in. You see, mathematically perfected economy is free license, free capacity, it's the only truly free enterprise, and it's the only truly free markets. You see, we can't be a truly free market when more and more of every unit of circulation that we spend is dedicated instead to servicing falsified indebtedness, and when the prices of industrial production are forced upward likewise, because as these debts are saddled upon industry, this forces industry to ever upwardly increase its prices merely to remain solvent, while its markets too are diminished in capacity to afford industry. So you see, this is a squeeze play in effect. This present obfuscation of the currency, which prevents us from prospering, but to a tiny fraction of our capabilities. And mathematically perfected economy frees us from every of the restrictions which have been imposed upon us without justification or warrant.
Okay, he's just started sending a message back there through the chat box, and I'm not going to say it out on air, but I have posted it to you, Mike, so you may want to have a check that.
Okay, I wasn't looking at my monitor here, but I'll wake it up and and go for it. Way to go, Pat. Thanks much. Actually, I've had a lot of people consider me a genius, but I don't consider myself any more intelligent than anyone else. I think what genius always comes down to is just good, clean work, accountability. So I think that's all there really is to it. I'm just a person like Pat probably is. It takes one to know one, Pat, but thanks.
I think that's the best compliment Pat's ever got. He's an old friend of mine, and well, to be honest with you, all he gets off me is abuse.
Well, that can be good sport.
Oh yeah, well I get it off him as well. So there we go. Okay, well Mike, that's pretty much everything. So it's www.perfecteconomy.com to read, or tnsradio.com to listen.
Right.
Cool.
Most people will probably appreciate listening. The last 5 programs, I think it was, have been really received raving compliments. So you might browse. The first one kind of introduces you to the whole. There's 8 introductory programs that cover all these issues in exhaustive detail, and including implementation and transitioning to mathematically perfected economy. We've really pretty much had that in this program, so you might skip forward to our Bank of England Freedom of Information Act inquiry. There's several programs that address the ongoing saga of that, and people who've become familiar with this, have had this much of an introduction to it. And I mean, here we are again, covering this in one evening, 4 hours indeed, but that's been pretty typical. I've been interviewed on a lot of radio all over the world there the last year and a half now, and it's funny how all that goes, because somebody will want to interview me for an hour program, I could tell a couple of quick stories about that before we go. An hour program, and then they'll call me, the day before, and we'll have a 6-hour discussion, and they'll just decide to have an open evening, all evening long, mathematically perfected economy. And I mean, 5 or 6 or 7 hours is typical. Another thing that's gone on is like, I'll be interviewed on a given station that's maybe interviewed all the major purportedly major monetary reformists, most of whom are just plagiarists of my work, which I say openly all the time. And for instance, all these people will be texting in and saying, holy cow, this guy sounds like the only guy I've ever heard who has the slightest idea what he's talking about. And it looks like he's absolutely right about all this, And I mean, people are flipping out right and left, and the end of the program, the host comes up with an idea, that the radio station manager is, tapping them on the shoulder and saying, here's a piece of paper, read this, and so they suggest that they have an open, monetary reform roundtable, with all these other people, that they've already interviewed like Bill Stills and Ellen Hodgson Brown and Steven Zarlinga, who are just 11th hour pretenders. I've been doing this for many times as long as all of them put together. And I was right from the beginning, and so I immediately agreed to do this roundtable with them. I've been dying to get them to face-to-face debate for forever, and they've been hiding from me. So they make a commitment to do a further program, a monetary reform roundtable, and so it turns out that a month later, I get an email from them that they've propositioned, all these other monetary reformists. But as soon as they found out that I was going to participate in the roundtable, that they all withdrew. So they end up dedicating the entire evening instead to mathematically perfected economy, which is only right.
Mm-hmm. Well, it needs that to get all the information out. It needs time.
Yeah.
This isn't something you could do in a 1 hour slot. You couldn't say, look, this is it, done.
Yeah, nor breaking for commercials or whatever, because you have to finish a thought, So you've been great, Rob. Thanks so much.
Well, Mike, thank you for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Okay, great. Well, I'll talk to you soon then, okay?
Yeah, no bother. You take it easy, Mike. And
okay,
actually, before you go, excuse me. As you know, I'm going to be putting this whole show is going up on a podcast on the One Sky Radio website.
Mm-hmm.
I'm then going to get the link off you, and I'm going to put a link to your shows just underneath that post. So if anybody wants to listen on to further information from yourself, they can just click that link and they can go straight to it.
Yeah. Yes, I'm typing it to you right now.
That's what I call efficiency.
Uh-huh.
I will lose though and have to get it off again tomorrow.
well, there it is right there. If you need it tomorrow, give me a jingle.
Yeah, I got it. Cool. So that's the plan for it anyway.
Great.
But Mike, once again, thanks a million. You've been an absolute star.
Well, thank you 10 million then, Rob, because you've been a star too.
And hopefully we'll have you back on again shortly.
Oh yeah, and when we get this site on, we'll spread the word through you too, okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Great,
Not
Rob.
a problem.
Okay, thanks, buddy. You have a good evening.
Morning now.
Yeah, it's morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Mike, you enjoy that dinner you're supposed to be having soon?
Oh, it'll be another hour or two here still. Yeah.
Oh God. All right, Mike. Have a good night.
Okay.
And,
thanks for staying up so late with me.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all.
Okay, Rob, Jane, Pat, everybody. Thanks again. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks again for listening. I am Mike Montagne, and if I may borrow the words of a wise friend of mine, and we are all related.